Folks, Scott here with the new My Monthly Hero kits for April of 2024. This is the premium kit, so we have both the premium and the classic kits this month. As always, they come in these great 8x10 zippered pouches. And we have a fairly straightforward folk art kit this month. This kit features these 3 color layering floral butterfly stencils. Color layering floral butterfly stencils. And here we have stencils 1, 2, and 3 for our color layering stencil. We also get a coordinating cover plate die. Looks like it cuts out almost everything. At least it shows an outline around almost everything. We also get 16 coordinating frame cuts, so whereas the cover plate doesn't cut out the bodies of the butterflies, so you could just pop up the wings, the coordinating frame cuts cut out the entire butterflies and some of the other florals as well. A 4x6-inch stamp set with all the sentiments on it, and we also get 3 reactive ink cubes in taffy, splash, and blue Hawaii. That's everything in the classic kit. And then, of course, in the premium kit, we get everything in the classic kit and this birds and flowers clear stamp set. This is a 4x6-inch stamp set with these lovely birds and some florals on it. We get 13 coordinating frame cuts that, of course, cut all of the images on this stamp set out. And we also have sentiment dies here. So it'll cut out these 4 sentiments in this stamp set as well. And then these interesting washi stickers. We get 16 washi stickers. So they're stickers made on washi tape. I know there's different types of folk art. There's Scandinavian folk art, there's Mexican folk art, there's American folk art, there's Polish folk art. Let's see if we can play with some different types of folk art with our kit this month. Let's dive right in. And here we have my 10 cards for the month. We've got a few colors here. There's craft black, there's a nice deep purple, a few rounded corner cards. So to start with, I figured I would go in the direction that the kit is sending me and use the included inks to color our folk art floral butterflies. Now this is from the Hero Arts website showing us that we're supposed to use taffy ink for stencil 1, splash for stencil 2, blue Hawaii for stencil 3. The stencils are numbered and have registration marks at the corners for help in lining them all up. Now, I tend to have a little bit of a lighter hand when it comes to color layering stencils, and I do like a little bit of soft color in the background. So I thought some Hero Hues ivory cardstock would work nicely with these colors and avoid a plain white background. I ink blended through the stencils with the included inks. That's, of course, the taffy and the splash and the blue Hawaii, but kept things a little softer overall. The stencils line up beautifully, and this folk art pattern certainly gives us full card coverage. Look at that, literally right up to the edges of a 4 1/4 and 5 1/2 inch A2 card base, right to the edges. I trimmed the colored panel to size with the largest Hero Arts nesting rounded rectangle dies. These fit perfectly around this stencil. I love how it captures the little leaves in the bottom corners, that one flower up there. I did stamp the sentiment directly on the card front using the blue Hawaii ink, and I embossed that with some clear embossing powder. These colors seem very classic Americana to me. Though American folk art does tend to be a little bit more landscape oriented, this feels kind of Pennsylvania Dutch folk arty to me. So we've got to try that cover plate die as well. I do recommend die cutting before stenciling. It makes everything lining up much easier. And so for card number 2, we've got You Make Life Beautiful. The die certainly gives us some nice definition. It's almost like an outline stamp. Literally all of the dots, every little flower has got a little cut on it. I don't think I see a single image on this that is not outlined, at least with the cutting die. I die cut the cover plate die on some plain white cardstock, and I ink blended the stencils with lemon drop ink for stencil 1, green apple for stencil 2, and creamsicle for stencil 3. I was really kind of created those around the fact that I wanted to make those leaves green. I glued the colored panel to a craft card base, so you've got some darker color underneath those lifted edges. And I added tiny spots of foam tape behind the butterfly wings and some of the greenery to keep it popped up even after it goes through a card. I think the butterflies are probably the most important popper-uppers. I stamped the sentiment on a scrap of ivory cardstock using root beer reactive ink and embossed that with clear embossing powder. You can see that shine there. I trimmed the sentiment to size and added a craft mat behind it. I attached the matted sentiment to the card front with some foam tape. Now, this doesn't quite fit any specifically localized folk art, I don't think, but it sure is springy. And then we have the frame cuts in the kit. I did see a good amount of Mexican folk art that kind of looks like paper cutouts. It could very well probably be painted, but painted very flat and very plain colored. This is my tribute to Mexican folk art. And we have You Make Life Amazing. And I love this great die cut card. I die cut everything from some textured lightweight cardstock, and I layered everything together. I dug out some old hole punches to add centers to some of the cards. It's another hole punch I used, medium-sized hole punch. That little itty-bitty one did the centers on the flowers, the little dots at the end of the stamens there. I really like the green leaf bits on the tiny red butterfly. Those are from the bottom of those leaf stems. I did stamp this cobbled together sentiment. I did use the You Make Life Amazing. So I combined those two. These larger sentiments just seem to eat up so much of your pattern, so I decided to cobble that together. I stamped that on a scrap of pitch black cardstock, stamped it with Versamark ink, and I embossed it with some, this is some old Love from Lizzie neon lime embossing powder. Actually was a really, really great match for this card. I die cut that sentiment with a Lawn Fawn Everyday Sentiment Banners die. I glued everything down to a pitch black card panel, glued that down to a white card base. I added the sentiment with some foam tape on top. I like this card a lot. And it actually reminds me of a lot of the Mexican folk art that I saw online. You Make Life Amazing. And I love that smaller sentiment. Doesn't take up quite so much room on my card front when you combine the smaller parts of two sentiments. So I recently purchased these acrylic markers from Altenew, and I thought I'd give them a try with this layering stencil. I got them because they're supposed to work really well on black cardstock. So we've got our black card base here, and a Celebrate Your Day. Now there's some colorful folk art on that card. I was pleasantly surprised at how well those acrylic markers worked with the stencils. I used good Hero Arts pitch black card base, and I was careful not to overflood the stencils with too much paint. But the markers laid on top of each other and on the black cardstock very nicely. Even the white dots here are some of those acrylic markers. I was so pleased with how those all worked. I did decide to do some outlining with a black Pigma micron pen on the butterflies and the layered flowers for a little bit more definition. I thought that pulled them into the background. I didn't go so far as to outline the leaf stems. I thought that would be too much, but all of the special detail in the flowers and the butterflies I thought deserved it. I stamped the sentiment on a scrap of pitch black cardstock and embossed that with white embossing powder. I trimmed that to size and added a scrap of multi-hued green. Oh, this is a little scrap of some pattern paper, some alcohol ink pattern paper I had. I used that for a mat behind my sentiment. and those are both attached to the card front with some foam tape. I think this one is my tribute to Polish folk art, which is usually very, very colorful and is often on black backgrounds. Celebrate your day! I will definitely have to play with those acrylic markers some more. Love how they worked on black. Now, when I think of nature patterned folk art, my mind easily goes to the blue and white classic Delft type patterns, which I think we kind of associate with Scandinavian folk art. This is a sending birthday wishes with a Scandinavian folk art feel. The big secret to this was selectively inking and white embossing parts of the number 3 stencil to create an ink resist to the blue colors going on top. All of the butterfly details and assorted flower centers are embossed first. Then I ink blended splash ink through stencil 1, blue Hawaii ink through stencil 2, and then I used some Concord and 9th Midnight ink for stencil number 3. I do think that super dark blue helps sell the Scandinavian feel here. I was a little impatient with this card, so I wasn't able to keep the background a pristine white, but I think it works well as a tribute to Scandinavian folk art. I trimmed the panel again with the rounded rectangle infinity die and glued that to a corner chomped white card base. I stamped the sentiment on white cardstock with Versamark ink, and I embossed that with Simon Says Stamp Steel Navy embossing powder. It's one of my favorite embossing powders of all time. I just love the color and the finish. Just beautiful. I die cut the sentiment with another rounded rectangle die, and I attached it to the card front with foam tape. Anyone have some pickled herring? This is my tribute to Scandinavian folk art. So that's my 5 cards using the classic kit. I really enjoyed trying to emulate assorted styles of folk art, but now we get to use the premium kit ingredients, and we actually have some stamps that we can color in this part of the kit. So our next card is You Are Amazing. There's that word again. Lots of amazing this month. I stamped the bird and greenery using intense black ink on some Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I used a square infinity die to help lay them out. I heat set the ink, and then I colored all with my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. I was very appreciative of the super fine tips on those markers because there are some tiny spaces on these stamps. I die cut that panel with a Tonic Studios scallop square layering dies, and then the matte from some periwinkle cardstock using the next larger die. I glued those together and then down to an A2 white card base. I stamped the sentiment on a scrap of white cardstock using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I embossed that with some clear embossing powder. I love the sentiment dies in the premium kit, so I die cut the sentiment and 2 blanks to glue together, and I glued the sentiment to the card front. I did add a little dusting of yellow chalk pastel around the bird just to give him a little background. He felt a little stark in the middle of that white. I was just happy to have something to color here. You are amazing. Now, I did see a lot of folk art that wasn't always on black or white backgrounds, but on lots of colors of background. So I thought my alcohol markers would stand up to some Arctic cardstock from Hero Arts. I stamped the sentiment in the center of an A2 panel of Arctic cardstock, and I arranged the florals around that. I stamped everything with Gina K Designs amalgam ink. It works so well with alcohol markers and my new Ahoo markers. I was surprised that the yellow didn't turn green, and considering how small some of these areas are, I'm very pleased with those Ahoo markers, super fine pointed brush tips. I die cut the panel with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, and I added a mat of black tie glitter cardstock. I glued those to a white card base and added some small crystal gems to carry the sparkle to the center of the card. This feels very freeform and casual, just like the sentiment, I think. Hope your day is as beautiful as you are. And I do appreciate the little bits of sparkle on this card. So we get a nice little pack of washi stickers in our premium kit. I was about to peel them and stick them to some cardstock when I realized that if I did that, I'd have to fussy cut them out again. So I checked to make sure that some foam tape would stick to the liner paper on the back of the stickers, and when it did, I decided to use the stickers as is. I didn't even pull off the liner, and you make my heart flutter. If you've followed me for any amount of time, you know that I am not a huge butterfly fan, especially on cards. I mean, butterflies are fine. I just think they're a little overused on cards. What can I say? So I'm doing pretty good here, I feel. I ink blended Thistle reactive ink around the edges of an A2 panel of white cardstock and stamped the sentiment in the same before embossing it with clear embossing powder. Then I added some splatters of Purple Galaxy reactive ink, and I glued the panel to a white card base. I added the stickers to the front with foam tape, taking care to support all of the tiny edges to resist curling. They're not the thickest stickers. You don't want them just curling down flat. I really do like these washi stickers. I mean, you're never going to get this kind of detailed coloring on these images with the stencil or the stamps themselves, so I really like that. And you can always tell the recipient that they can peel the butterflies and flowers off of the front of the card and use them as stickers. That's downright interactive. You make my heart flutter. I like the purple. Now, I can't ignore the fact that we get 9 frame dies that cut out the 9 butterflies that are revealed on our butterfly color layering stencils. So now we have a thank you card with 9 different butterflies on it. I inked up the stencils, concentrating on the butterflies with Fruit Punch, Thistle, and Purple Galaxy reactive inks. And then I die cut all the butterflies with their matching dies. It's amazing that every one of these butterflies is a little bit different. I fiddled around with a few different background colors for a while, and I settled on this white panel embossed with this is an old Tailored Expressions burlap embossing folder. I thought that would work great with our butterflies. And I thought that the white gave us the best pop on the butterflies, and the embossing pulled our background a little bit more into the background. I mean, part of what's hard about making these pop is they have no outlines. There's no black outlines on these or no white borders around these. So I went with white with a little burlap embossing for our background. I distressed the edges of the background with the blade of my scissors, and I glued it down to an A2 purple card base. I stamped the sentiment on a scrap of white cardstock using VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I embossed it with clear embossing powder. I die cut the sentiment along with 2 blanks with the matching die and glued all 3 layers together. Now I folded the wings of the butterflies up and glued their bodies and antenna to the card front, and lastly glued the sentiment in place. I am amazed that all 9 of these butterflies are actually different, either coloring or size. They are all unique. Thank you. So while I was tinkering around with possible patterns I could create using the stamps in the premium kit, I started playing around with the birds, and I came up with a fun combo that was easy to create with minimal masking. And we have Wishing You the Best. So I masked off the tail feathers on the second bird stamp. That's this one right here. I just masked off those tail feathers right at that point and stamped 2 of them tail to tail. Then it was easy to mask off the 2 points and stamp the flower behind. Very interesting. I thought that worked great. I don't know why, but I really liked that. I guess it's kind of a push me, pull you bird. I stamped everything with Gina K amalgam ink, and I colored everything with my Tombow watercolor markers. Again, the fine points on those markers helps get into all the tiny spaces on these stamps. Now, I die cut this whole image by partially die cutting the birds just behind the wings and then fussy cutting around the center flower. I die cut 4 more blank birds and I glued them behind the stamped birds, trimming away the tail feathers as needed. So this has got a little bit of thickness to it. I took a white card base and I stenciled the background with an old mini swirly garden stencil from Balzer Designs. Old one, but good one. I used taffy ink blending out towards the edges. I stamped the sentiment with intense black ink and decided to add the 2 floral sprigs in the center to fill out the colored birds. I glued the layered birds to the card front, and I think I'll call this one's Scott's Modern New York City Folk Art. Wishing you the best. That double bird makes me grin. And that wraps up all 10 of my cards for April. I did manage to use every image stamp in this kit and most of the sentiments, along with a great deal of the frame cuts. I used some of the washi stickers and, of course, the stencils and cover plate die. I'm sure there's a million more options available with this unique kit. A colorful batch of springy cards. I love to see the stencils in different color combos, and this die cut card really pops. Now, I must apologize for my late post this month. April has been an extremely busy month for me, and combined with the fact that this kit, in all its permutations, sold out extremely quickly, made me feel like I didn't have to rush this to post, though I wanted to get it up as soon as I could. That's right, the classic and the premium kits and even the premium elements have long been sold out. There must be more butterfly madness out there than I thought. If you've followed me for any time, you know I'm not that particularly fond of butterflies, but here we have 7 out of 10 cards featuring butterflies. Who'd have thunk it? I must express my thanks for sharing your time with me here. I am always encouraged and humbled by your support. Let me know if you have any favorites here. Please remember to click that like button at the top of this post. That helps a lot. And share me on your Facebook and Pinterest pages, Instagram. Remember, don't run with scissors. And once again, I'm sending you and yours love and light and happy crafting. For more detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at cardcutups.com.